Today on the Criss Cross Cinema Podcast, two very different heists for the ages, but the same name, Ocean's 11.
Two fellows meet accidentally, like you and me. No connection between them at all, never saw each other before. They swap murders. Criss Cross.
Wilson! I'm sorry, Wilson! A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
You gotta keep breathing, because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Hello and welcome to the Criss Cross Cinema Podcast, where we crisscross cinema history to find connections you may have never recognized. Today, two heist movies set 40 years apart. Two Vegases, different pacing, different scores, different characters, but the same title, Ocean's 11. Hi, I'm Aaron Wilson, writer, director, and incurable heist fan.
And I'm Mark Klobus, still learning how to be camera ready.
My name is Hugh, just one word. And I'm an actor, and I also am a creative with writing, film production, whatever the case may be.
Cool. Today, just as always, we'll review our two films, and then we go crisscross to compare and contrast. But first, Mark, what media has infiltrated your brain?
Well, I haven't been watching much lately. Instead, I've been reading, and I've been delving into some classic detective fiction. I read a Rex Stout and Nero Wolfe novel called The Silent Speaker, which was, Rex Stout. By that point, he's hitting on all cylinders and turning out these fantastic mysteries about this detective in the New York brownstone. And I'm also reading Carter Dickinson's 9 and Death Makes 10, which interested me because it's a murder mystery that was written during World War II and is set aboard a liner crossing the Atlantic and carrying munitions. And it's in the Sir Harry Merivale series.
So do those come into play, the munitions?
Well, you get that, but I must confess, I haven't gotten to the end. So
okay.
I'll probably finish it in a day or two.
That's probably Act 3.
Yeah, but I just got to the point where a second body has been produced for the mystery, and I'll have to get back to it as soon as we're done here.
Cool.
How about you, Hugh?
Media. So I've actually been watching several things. Mostly TV shows. The first one is Equalizer with Queen Latifah. We got on that recently, and it's been exciting to watch. Pretty wholesome, and it gets into issues that I care about. Also, a Night Agent. Season 2 came out, and I'm just like, okay, we're watching it, and it's just fun. It's more fun than anything. One media I'm watching right now is a film. It's 4 parts. Called Kingdom. It's a Japanese film about, I don't know how accurate the Chinese history is, but it's set in China. And I'm rewatching 1, 2, and 3 because 4 just came out. I was patiently waiting for 4. Just came out, and I'm like, oh, okay, great. So I can't remember 1, 2, and 3, so let me watch those again. But it's for me exciting. I like timepieces, so
it's cool.
It's set BC, 200 BC or something like that.
Oh wow.
How about you, Aaron? Yeah,
so I watched a movie called The Green Knight. That's an A24 movie. So it's kind of got that vibe of I don't know. It's very atmospheric is what I'll say. It's there's a few action beats at the beginning, but then the middle is very, I guess, open to interpretation. Until you get to the end, you're like, what is this about? And then the end, they had me right up to the end. Like I was like, okay, but I wasn't happy with the way it was ending. And then the very end, they bring it back around and I'm like, oh, that's a good ending. So it takes some patience, I think, but it's a really good one. And it's got that strong medieval vibe to it, which is fun. But
so it's based upon the medieval romance.
Yeah. So it's, I should have introed any of it, but it's King Arthur's Knights.
Gotcha.
Gawain. They say it Gawain in the movie, which is probably a more accurate pronunciation, but it took me a little bit to understand what they were saying. But he basically fights the Green Knight and beats him, and then he's got to deal with him that he has to go in a year, fight him again, and I think take the same blow that he gave to him. And still not a spoiler, he chops off the Green Knight's head at the beginning, so he has to face that at the end. But yeah, it was really good. You just got to be a little patient with it until you get to the end, and it wraps it up really well.
That's true for a lot of A24 films, I find.
Yeah, but I think the only other one that I've seen is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah,
that one.
saw that.
Yeah, that one's all over the place. So
Yeah.
doesn't have the same problem. But anyway, so that's what we've been watching. Just like always, we'll be diving deep. Fair warning, here there be spoilers. Now our review of Ocean's 11, 1960.
I had totally forgotten, because it had been so long since I last watched it, that the 1961 version opens with Saul Bass opening credits.
Yeah.
And I am such a
That's
fan.
probably the best thing about the movie.
Oh, easily. I mean, it's just, every time it's so iconic. I mean, that guy, I don't know if he ever did a subpar opening credits.
Yeah, he did most of the ones for the Bond movies, right? Or at least some of them.
I don't know if he did the Bonds.
No, didn't he not? Okay,
Yeah.
well,
I mean, of course,
that's kind of the style that he does, though.
Yes.
And it is, he did North by Northwest and
Psycho.
Oh yeah, a lot of really classic, not just Hitchcock, but all kinds of classic movies.
I mean, he's one of those ones who was so iconic and was so influential.
Yeah.
And so, he may not have done the Bonds, but I would not be surprised in the least if what he did inspired how they did the Bond.
Yeah,
credits.
for sure.
Yeah.
And so basically the visuals for this one is a bunch of circles that animate to, I guess it's poker chips as an inspiration for it.
I actually took it as the Las Vegas lights.
Oh, okay.
All the light
that
shows and the
works too.
signs.
And so it makes like the animated 11 in the Ocean's 11, and it does these animations all the way through it. And yeah, it's very visually interesting.
Yeah.
But then we get into the movie.
and we get introduced to it starts weirdly enough with the organizers. It's very this thing that struck me when I was watching it was how you're coming in the middle. They've already concocted the heist.
Although they don't tell you until halfway through
Yeah.
the movie.
Right.
But
they've already partially assembled the crew.
yeah.
Because you have Danny Ocean, which of course is Frank Sinatra's character, and you have I guess Josh Howard's already involved. Jimmy Foster, Peter Lawford's character, and it's like, and of course Roger Cornelius, Henry Silva's character. They're already there. They just have to get the other half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's weird, and it kind of gets to how it's really about introducing the character's motivations.
And I didn't even recognize that they'd already had half the crew together because they're kind of interchangeable. Like it's hard to keep track of these guys, but
Yeah.
they're all just mostly white guys in suits, and most of them look like Dean Martin.
I definitely had a hard time, like, who's who, because the hairstyle was so similar.
Yeah.
And, the suits, I'm like, I don't know which one is which, other than Frank and Sam.
But they're not very economical with getting the second half of their crew, though. It's up to 60 minutes before they actually get the entire crew together.
Exactly. And it's really, I mean, there's some character development, but you're getting character development of just like two or three of them. You're getting Jimmy Foster's character development. You're getting Tony Bergdorf's character development. And then everyone else is just kind of like, we're just doing this because you know what? My old army buddy called me up and said, hey, you want to knock over some casinos? And I'm like, sure, why not? I got nothing better going on in my life.
Yeah, definitely not much character going on between the characters. Just like, it's very blanketed. Like,
and I think it gets to how there's just and I think it gets to how the genesis of this project, how it becomes a Rat Pack project. And it's like, well, we don't need that because it's the Rat Pack. We'll just go ahead and, stick these 5 guys in front of the camera and
they'll just be cool in front of camera. And that's all we got.
And we just need to, find 6 other, guys and kind of surround them, which is kind of funny too, because one of the 2 characters that gets the most development is not a member of the Rat Pack. It's Richard Conte's character.
Is that the one that has the son?
Yeah.
that he just got out of jail.
Oh,
and he wants
yeah.
to-
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I had totally missed who he was the first time I saw it because I was not as knowledgeable. But did either of you recognize Richard Conte?
I thought I mixed him up with Dean Martin. So it wasn't till that scene that he sees his son that I'm like, oh, okay, this is a different guy.
Well,
But yeah.
Richard Conte goes on to star as the main antagonist in the most iconic gangster movie in American history. He plays Emilio Barzini in The Godfather.
Oh, okay.
And I find that so fascinating because of the fact Conte did a lot of films with Sinatra. And I don't think he wasn't part of the Rat Pack, but he apparently was friendly enough to where Sinatra wanted him. And I find it fascinating because the way that the film, like The Godfather, goes on and has this Sinatra stand-in, and the way that they criticize him for the mob associations, and it's just like watching. Here's Conte in this film with Sinatra, and I think he's one of the better parts of the movie, and how. He goes on to be part of a film that really does a lot to, try to undermine the Sinatra aura.
Yeah.
And how apparently he went along with it. He ended up making, he died a few years later, but but in that meantime, he just became this go-to gangster figure because he was so good in The Godfather.
Mm-hmm.
Typecasting.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And when it works, it works.
Yeah.
So keep going.
You have to wonder about some actors who, in these later years, when they get typecast, if they're just like, I'm just happy for the work.
Nowadays, especially when work is so scarce, you just want to work.
I have to ask myself, what accent is Akeem Tamiroff doing? He plays
Yeah, I have no
Spiros.
idea.
and this
The
guy,
older guy that's
the organizer.
always being pranked by Frank Sinatra.
I was way more thrown off by the sound of the audio and the matching with the lips
Oh, okay.
more than anything. I was like, I'm really having a hard time not following, but it's like it's throwing me off because it doesn't seem like it's matched perfectly.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of that for me, but what I got thrown off more by was the dubbing when Frank Sinatra's doing the pranks, because it's like, I'm going to do
Clearly
a
not
fake.
his voice.
It's like Sinatra was. I can imagine on set Sinatra like, yeah, I'm not doing other voices. I'm doing my voice, and so it's like, well, shoot, nobody's going to buy the fact that he's. So we got to go ahead and dump him. And
You
then
mean I have to act? I don't do that.
yeah, which apparently was the thing, was that these guys would, they'd act for the day, and then apparently, when the day's shooting was over, they'd go and get drunk and party, and they showed up and they're just kind of like, oh well, we're just gonna, because you get the feeling so many of them are just kind of sleepwalking through this.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's literally how or why this movie was made, of just an excuse for them to hang out in Vegas together. And he would only do one take, literally. Like, that's every shot. I saw a documentary. Well, I slept half through a documentary afterwards because the end of this movie literally put me to sleep. But they talked about that. That's some of the part I caught, was he would only do one take, and that was non-negotiable basically. And so it's a movie of first takes, and I think it really shows.
Another thing, though, that I think it shows, and this is a positive, is you really see the chemistry between them. It's like, in a way, they can get away with it because these people have, spent so much time playing off one another. So you can see, and that dynamic bleeds through. And this is something that struck me when I was watching it, that when you get to the plan, you discover for the first time that while this is Ocean's 11, and when you get that first scene with Sinatra and Lawford, Sinatra very quickly, makes it clear he's in charge. And yet you learn, when they're explaining the heist, they start using their titles from the war. Lawford was the officer.
Lawford is the guy that keeps getting pranked with the accent.
No, that's Spiros. Lawford is
Lieutenant,
Jimmy
I think.
Foster. He's the guy with the whose mother's getting married to Duke Santos.
Oh, so, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. We see that they're already together. They're in the hotel in Phoenix with because they're recruiting one of the faceless guys, and and I mean, it's, you know, Sinatra's in charge, and you get the impression that's who it's going to be. You see it also in the bowling scene where he's like, he's always throwing strikes because that's who Sinatra's got to be. But you find out that Lawford was the one who was in command during the war, and yet it's very clear that, you know, they're implying that you know, Lawford was never in command. It was always Ocean, and Lawford was along for the ride, and it works given Lawford's character. You know, he's sort of he's you know, kind of under the thumb of his mother, and he needs the money, and
yeah, he seems a lot younger. Like, it's, I don't know, he maybe doesn't even seem like he would be in the same squadron or whatever as these guys.
Which sounds like an officer, you know. A lot of officers are younger than their sergeants. Sergeants, they're many times sergeants are, you know, enlisted. They're in their longer periods of time than officers. So you have this 23-year-old officer in charge of a 40-year-old sergeant, staff sergeant or whatever. So.
And Sinatra was older than Lawford by about 7 years, so it all fits.
Yeah,
it was just the idea that there was an implication in any degree that there was someone who at some point was, we're never going to say superior to the chairman, but, you know, who was, you know, of higher rank, and yet, you know, never once is Lawford the one giving orders. You get the impression maybe Sinatra's doing all this as a favor to Lawford. Lawford's like, you know, I'm tired of being, you know, having to, you know, crawl to my mother for MONY. Oh, excuse me, MONEY. Such a weird moment. Yeah, and so I really need my own money. So, you know, how can I do this without actually having to work? So,
yeah, heaven forbid.
But I had to say the thing that threw me off was the way that they included Sammy Davis Jr. in the crew. I mean, he's vital to the plot. They make him a war buddy, but they really play up this idea that they're all World War II veterans.
Yeah.
How did Sammy Davis Jr. serve in the 82nd Airborne during a period where the military was still segregated?
Yeah.
I mean, if they had made a Korean War, it would have solved everything. But then it would have been part of that greatest generation. You know, we're off, you know, taking, you know, Normandy and, you know, all these other places, which is they constantly are making references to. You know, hey, you know, we stormed the Rhine River, yada yada. And it just was which is interesting because they touch upon racism in other ways. It's not like they're ignoring it, but they've got this huge plot hole, which is based around the fact that, you know, Sammy's an iconic member of the Rat Pack, so we got to include him somehow. And so we're going to go ahead and, you know, make him, you know, part of it. And it just bugged me that they never even, you know, they just were like, oh, whatever, you know. It's kind of part of the laziness of the movie.
We're that's a
do
good
whatever we need
word
to do
for it.
Yeah,
the whole movie, just lazy.
Yeah,
the culture of the times too. You know, they weren't. I mean, still 60s. The segregation was still going on. So technically, like you didn't give them that much time or that much explanation as to why, because it was like it's an afterthought. I'm surprised they even got a role, to be honest. But
do you know that this film apparently did something to undermine segregation in Las Vegas?
Did it?
I read that when they were in Vegas, Davis wasn't allowed to stay in Vegas hotels. There was no formal Jim Crow law. There was just this informal thing. Right. And apparently Sinatra, who was never a fan of segregation, was insistent that Davis stayed in the hotel, and it helped to do away with that. So again, I mean, in that sense, it's a weirdly socially aware movie, but at the same time, it kind of glosses over what would have been the most glaring example for and it's not like they couldn't have. They're just like, you know, it's all about these guys hanging out. We'll just make it up as we go.
Yeah. And leading up to everybody hanging out, there is a lot of phone calls just back and forth.
Operator.
And it's like, operator stuff. Like it just, they do the whole thing. It's not even truncated for movie watching purposes. They do the literal, they've got to talk to the operator. They've got to do all the steps. And it's like, why are we watching this?
Yes. It just feels so padded. And I think nothing makes it feel more padded than this whole subplot about Danny's soon-to-be ex-wife, Beatrice. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's Angie Dickinson who, was one of the people associated with the Rat Pack. And she's in this film and she does a fine job to a degree, but it's like, it feels so like, what purpose does this serve in the movie? Mm-hmm. Especially when apparently Danny loves her, and yet his participation in this is pushing her away. Mm-hmm. And it just, I mean, you get
they do a great job of adapting this for the remake, of making it up, and we'll get there when we get there. But yeah,
but at least it does give me my one of my favorite bits of dialogue, which is when Beatrice and Danny have this, when Danny's like, I'm doing this thing, and she's heard it before, whatever, and she kind of says that she's going through the divorce because she just has had enough, and he goes to the elevator, and he says to the elevator operator, going down. Where do they serve the drinks? To the bar. And the way it was just delivered, I just thought was nicely done. It was one of the parts that kind of gets to it's not really dialogue so much as it's banter.
Yeah.
That really makes this film as watchable as it is.
One thing that's interesting is, I forget at what point this is, but somewhere near the beginning, they're discussing, I think the guy with the accent, it's Spiros is listing the jobs that they've done, and one of them is a supermarket. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So apparently that's how Danny's been paying the bills. So.
Yeah.
Now, I was wondering, who do you feel was doing the most actual acting in the movie?
That's yeah.
I'm not remembering the names very well. I should remember this because I just saw it last night. But I feel like most of them were just there talking, and which is fine. That's what acting is. Acting is not acting. Acting is being, right? So, I couldn't say, for me, I don't know, it's hard to pinpoint which one was actually trying to like show and be a performer, other than anyone who sang, at the New Year's, or Sam at the beginning. Mm-hmm. That was cool watching him perform.
Oh yes.
Yeah. With the guys, with his fellas. But I would say Angie, honestly, when she was talking with Frank, how she reacted when she saw him, or even not the mistress, but the girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like her resentment towards him. I think those stood out to me more, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with those. I would add to that Cesar Romero, who plays Duke Santos, and then Richard Conte. And it's interesting how, in that sense, you have basically two categories. You have the people that are there who are actually acting, and then you have the Rat Pack who is just hanging out.
Yeah.
And then they're not even bothering to be anything different than who they are.
That's what I'm saying. It was like a blanket or a cookie cutter. Like I didn't know who was who because they all kind of were the same.
Yeah.
Exactly. Especially when you get past, apart from Richard Conte playing the guy, because he's characterized, he has a son. We know that about him. He has some sort of medical condition. And then, of course, Duke being the antagonist, he's developed. And Cesar Romero, does that kind of effortless charm thing. It's fascinating to think that. I watch this, I'm thinking, in a few years, he's going to be the first Joker. Mm-hmm. He becomes, he ends up playing the Joker in the Batman TV series, and how it's just that's sort of his great iconic image, and this is just in many ways the exact opposite. I mean, this is a guy who can act and who shows up for it.
Yeah,
it's like, and I admire the professionalism, because it seems like a couple of the ancillary cats they saw what's happening. It's like, well, I'm getting paid, so I'm just going to hang out.
And now that you're saying that, I'm thinking about it more. Acting is about choices, right? And it feels like, going back to Angie, her choice of, she loves him but can't be with him, but struggles that push and pull of wanting to be with him but can't because of his character and things like that. That's what, seeing her in that role, I was like, okay.
There's some human emotion
There's
there.
human emotion, but
Than-
everyone, but the rest, a lot of them were just like, yeah, like you said, I'm just here.
I mean, for me, that's inferior. And I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but to what you see in the remake, because she's doing that, and Sinatra's like, line. he's just.
They actually got to a point in the filming of the movie where they just used cue cards. Like
wow.
They were too busy partying and talking up girls at night that they didn't want to learn their lines, so they just used cue cards for everybody.
It's also, I think, why they went to the excuse of, well, we're just going to banter, and a lot of that dialogue between them is just stuff they made up on the spot. And you would think, hey, because they're that comfortable with it, it's just because they're too lazy to learn their script.
Yeah.
So, but I think about what Cesar Romero brings to the film. When you see the scene where he meets Jimmy, Peter Lawford's character, for the first time, Jimmy goes to the house because he's getting money from his mother. He's that much. He's very much the man child, and he meets Duke Santos for the first time, and there's that tension between them, and it's nicely done. It's like Lawford steps up and actually starts acting for once, instead of just trying not to overshadow Frank Sinatra, who is not making it easy because he's not putting anything out there. So Lawford's got to make sure he's always got it one notch down from Sinatra. And yet there he is acting. There's Cesar Romero, and he's actually stepping up. He got that great. It was the first time I really felt any sort of tension in the movie. Was between those two,
which is interesting. This goes a bit into Criss Cross, but there is not an antagonist for this movie until the third act. With Cesar Romero's character, and it's like, where did this come from? Like, once we get there, and then, but they blow it out of the park with the remake of having a very strong antagonist.
I guess I missed it at the beginning, like who he, and other than the new to be husband, I didn't know what his purpose was.
Yeah, he really doesn't have one until the third act. But
I mean, they set up in the first act that apparently he is some sort of legendary criminal, and there's that apparently he has this past which he has put behind him. So he's kind of like a Henry Hill in the sense that he has this reputation, but supposedly now he's going straight. And he's just. And you get the impression he misses the old days because he's constantly lamenting his lost youth.
And the chief is just taking him at his word that he's going to help.
Well, I think that's because by that point he's endorsed by the casino owners,
who are shady businessmen.
Well, that
we don't even see until the like those could have been really good antagonists.
Exactly.
And they combine that into one person for the sequel or for the remake, and they make him a formidable character. I'm getting ahead of ourselves. I really want to get ahead of ourselves. With this
I know. I apologize. I'm dragging it out. But one other thing about those casinos, the head of them, and this is somebody I don't think anybody would have recognized today, it was George Raft. George Raft had this great career in the 20s and 30s playing gangsters. I mean, you would have think that if you're, it's like kind of like putting Cagney there, putting Edward G. Robinson there. I mean, he would have made a great antagonist, but instead they make it Cesar Romero. And Romero does a fine job, and they had this personal, but they don't develop it.
Yeah. So there's something that they almost do in this movie that I wish they would have done something with when you got to give me the character's name that has the son.
Bergdorf. Richard Conte. Tony Bergdorf.
Okay, so
we can't even tell there's a
Tony for sure.
Yeah, okay, so jeez. Okay, the guy with the kid, he goes to the jeez. This movie.
No, it's a fair point. That's a fair point. So many of these guys are it's like you have there's such a disparity. I mean, the only reason that Norman Fell stands out is because I remember watching Three's Company when he played the landlord to the John Ritter and the two women.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like a late thing. And of course he shows up and, but I mean, these guys were just so many anonymous actors.
Yeah.
As I say, the only guy that had real depth and stakes was the guy with the kid.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say. Like, there's two things that have heart to this movie. The first one is the ex-wife. The other one is the kid, and that's the biggest amount of heart that you have in this movie. And he goes to the school, and there's this really cool thing that they almost do, where he gives him this abacus that he made, and he's like playing with it as he's at the car, and he's like, "What's?" And I think Sinatra's character asks, like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, just
No, that was Henry Silva's character. That was Roger Greenhill.
See what I mean? I can't even tell Sinatra.
Yeah, look alike. Wrong movie.
They all sound alike.
They all dress alike. Yeah. There's such a monochronism.
Well, there is one scene where Sinatra wears an orange sweater.
Oh yes,
but,
yes.
Aside from that, jeez. Anyway, but like they almost do a charged object with that. Mm-hmm. If they would have had at the scene where he dies at the end, that falls out of his pocket, that would like break your heart. It's like, back. Oh my goodness. But
they didn't. Yeah. I can't say they didn't, but I don't feel like it was. Like you're saying, it wasn't as good a job as in bringing things back around.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have required a second take, but they weren't doing second take.
They almost do some good stuff in this movie, but they just lazily let it go off, and it goes nowhere.
It's not a film; it's elements of a film.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, Sinatra actually ripped out pieces of pages of scripts, so maybe those are in those pages. But
what was the not the budget, but like what did they gross?
Oh, I don't know.
Just wondering.
I'm sure it was like pretty sure it was popular.
Yeah, I mean, those guys.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah. So. It's kind of been forgotten, though, and I think rightly so.
Well, I don't know if it's forgotten because, I mean, well, for one thing, you have the remake, but it's also because it's the one film in which you have the entire Rat Pack. And so much of it depends upon that. I mean, they acted together in the films. It's the only time that all five of them were in the same movie together. And that's one of the things I think has been a staying power for a long time. Because when I was growing up, I made it a point to watch it because you still had that, that Rat Pack was still part of the culture. Of course, I mean, they were all much older by then. But they still would talk about the Rat Pack this, Rat Pack that. Sinatra still had this outsized, presence in the American cultural imagination. And so it was like, it's kind of like the Cliff Notes version of the Rat Pack is to watch this movie.
Yeah. So that's basically the only entrance into this, though. So like subsequent generations, especially Gen X or Gen Z or whatever we're on, has no entrance to this.
And in some ways, sorry, go ahead.
No, but you do hear Frank Sinatra's songs everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah.
Everywhere you go.
Or Dean Martin's.
Starbucks or whatever.
Yeah.
Dean Martin's, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always hear songs.
Yeah, and
they have, they have some good singing parts in this, but it has nothing to do with the story.
No.
Again, so.
In some ways, the movie does them does the reputations disservice because every single one of them is better in other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, Sinatra, you wouldn't know that he actually won an honest-to-goodness Oscar before this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for The Man with the Golden Arm. You wouldn't know about, Sammy Davis Jr.'s, amazing work. You wouldn't know that, Peter Lawford had a great reputation as an actor, or, Henry Silva goes on and does amazing stuff too, or Cesar Romero stuff. You watching them here, and while some of them are stepping up, it's just like to go and watch it. It is a Cliff Notes version to get the Rat Pack of this, but you're not seeing the best of the Rat Pack. And
them at their best work. You're saying, yeah.
And so people are going to probably, in I think future years, if they watch this and this is their introduction to Rat Pack, be like, why do these guys have the reputation they do?
That's exactly how I feel about it. Like I don't know much about Sinatra and Dean Martin apart from obviously their famous songs, but like I don't know much about them as people. And from this, I'm like, okay, well, I don't have much interest.
I started to look them up, and then I fell down into the rabbit hole of their personal lives more than their talents. Oh, you had 4 wives or whatever.
or you were sleeping this person. Like apparently
all the stuff with JFK and stuff.
Oh yeah. But, like apparently Angie Dickinson and Richard and Frank Sinatra had a 20-year affair.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, which might explain why she's in the movie. So,
Yeah.
I mean, not that she doesn't do a good job, but it does feel, again, if to the degree to which this film is a hangout movie, they got their friends. Like the one who plays the other woman in it.
The girlfriend.
Yeah, the other girlfriend. I'm trying to look up her name here real quickly. Patrice Wymore.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why she's in the movie?
No.
Nepotism? In a way, yeah.
Okay.
She was Errol Flynn's wife.
Oh, okay.
And he had just died. And apparently Sinatra got her this role so that she could restart her acting career. So it was, hey, again, it's like the degree to which this is about everything other than making a movie. It's like, we're going to hang out and it's going to be a job program for this, for this friend of mine. And, that's pretty much what it is. And the funny thing is, it's like there's so much that here that could be good.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about when they're explaining the heist.
Yeah.
And,
so
let's
we are.
Let's get to that. Yeah.
Midway through the movie, an hour in, we're finally to something.
Mm-hmm.
They're explaining the heist, and this is, I'll let you get into it, but it's the simplest heist you've ever heard of.
Yeah. But things for me, the best part of it is when Dean Martin's character is trying to talk them out of the heist. Because I'm sitting there, I'm listening to him, basically explain why they shouldn't be doing this. I'm nodding my head. I mean, and I think it gets to something else about this movie, which made it popular, which is not just the Rat Pack, but you figure the audience for this must have been these guys who had served in World War II and who probably at this point in their life were still going through life thinking, yeah, me and my buddies, we could do that. We could do that. So this idea, well, we're just going to get a bunch of our buddies together from 15 years ago when we were, these fit warriors. And yeah, we can knock over 5 casinos because we're that awesome.
And they do mention in the movie that like, we're not the men that we used to be. Like can we do this? And then that's not really brought up ever again.
Exactly. That's what Dean Martin does is that, you see some of it with like, they hint at it up to this point with like Richard Conte says it. And then there was the one guy who was like, his name was Curly and he's bald. They're implying these guys, have a few years on them, but in the same way that everyone thinks that, you have these guys who think that, in a crisis they'll be this awesome, Rambo character in, even though the fact that, it's been a long time since they've been able to, walk to get their mail without, taking a pause to catch their breath. But it kind of plays to that fantasy that audience must have had at this point. These guys could all that, and they don't have to train. They don't have to practice. They're just like, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to do the setup and it's just going to all go smooth
you hit on something that's about the most boring part of this movie.
Oh my gosh.
There is no practice. There is no setting up of, I'll go into how the next one does it really well and how you do a heist, but they do nothing with that. They just, it's like, we're going to hang around until the heist. And then
how well did they even scout out the place?
Well, 5 of them were already working there. And then Martin had this knowledge of Vegas, which is one of the reasons why he was saying it couldn't work. But yeah, it was just, and of course it was like, it starts around Christmas and they're doing this on New Year's, which means that they reveal the plan after Christmas and they do the heist New Year's night. But it also gets to the fact that you would think actually that would be a really neat setup if there was like a ticking clock.
Yeah.
If they were like, hey, we gotta do
how you do a suspense movie. Yeah. A heist movie. You do some of those things. Yeah. Sorry. I'm being very facetious here.
You're absolutely right. But then when they do it, there is no tension to it because it goes off so smoothly. And it goes, and you know what they do? They highlight the lack of tension by having the characters constantly talk about, if it would be any smoother, I'd feel guilty doing it. It's like, is this supposed to be exciting? Do they even use guns when they're doing the robbery?
I thought I saw one.
I think they hold them up, like when the lights are off, they like hold them at gunpoint.
Because I remember a couple of them was like they had flashlights. They were taking advantage of startling these people.
Yeah, I thought there was at least one.
Okay, there was a gun.
Weapon. Maybe That's what this.
I mean, there's no guns in the sequel. But that sequel, I keep calling it the sequel.
The
remake.
The remake.
Yeah.
There were in the remake when they were
SWAT.
Yeah, the SWAT team, exactly.
Yeah.
But then that was all part of the
props.
pose. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Stage.
The antagonist had guns too, shooting at the tires. That's the second. Yeah.
Well, I meant the main guys, but yeah.
But I mean, but you get to that point where Sam Harmon, D. Martin's character, he's basically giving all these reasons that, and it would be something that would, again, it's like they're introducing an interesting element of tension, but then it's like, well, I guess we're going to do the heist without him, and he's like, it's like, the laziest way of getting back in. He just basically throws up a sense, well, you're not going to do it without me. I'll do it anyway. It's like,
he doesn't want them to fail or something, and he joins back up, and it's like, okay, well.
Well, he doesn't explain that. It's just kind of like, well, if you guys are going to do it, I guess I'm going to go along with you.
Twist his arm or something, blackmail something.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least have him saying
we're
about...
doing some kind of drama here. It's like we're doing a movie, and it's like, oh, no.
Or have them sell it on, do it for the team, or have Richard Conte's character talk about, do this for my son, just something, rather than just having him just suddenly go from giving all these great reasons why they shouldn't be doing
this.
But
you know what?
Let's
do it. Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we get 20 minutes of this drawn out setup for the heist where we have to see them do the same thing 5 times over in 5 different casinos.
It's just the worst. They have that shot of all the 5 signs, and it's like, okay, well, couldn't you have put all the 5 times you happen, or they do one shot where they do the trash cans all in the same shot. It's like, could we just play this scene out like that?
Yeah.
Get it over with.
It's like, if you ever needed a montage in a movie, this would be the time.
Yeah.
This is like a case study of why you use montages in movies, because showing the same thing 5 times over, this film is like, daring you to fall asleep or to stay
and I
awake.
did a couple times.
That being said, I did appreciate Shirley MacLaine's cameo, and let's shout out for the fact that she's a CCCP Criss Cross alum. She was in Trouble with Harry, and she has that great cameo. And that was another thing where apparently she was like showed up. And it's like, hey, let's go ahead and do a scene. And of course, there was absolutely no tension in it. It was just like, we're going to have her stumble around, and Richard Conte is trying to get into that one last electrical room to do the setup of the doors, or
they're trying to do suspense, but they fail at it. They do just a really bumbly character moment with her. It's like,
I thought it was just me. Like, where's the tension? Okay, tension. No, that wasn't that much going on.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
okay, I'm glad you guys felt the same way.
And it's like the lack of tension infects the other actors, because when they do the robbery, and it's just like, hey, this is a robbery, and everyone throws up their hands, and they take the money and they walk away. And then it's when you get it's the Flamingo is the first one where they kind of played out, because that happens to be where Duke Santos is, and the workers there are kind of like, hey, we've been hit. Oh, we should call the sheriff.
Yeah. I didn't even notice that, but now you say that, that's exactly how that was.
Even the garbage truck, when they pulled him, not even pull him over, they were like, get out the way. I'm like, he was like, gladly, I'll go.
Yeah.
So when Sam says, I'll go, I'm like, can they just have
No. This is the part where you do the suspense scene.
Yeah, check the truck, something.
Check the back, and then maybe you drive away. Or,
You have them kind of poking through the garbage. Exactly.
Something.
And then maybe say, this is just too much. But no, that's just like wave it on. It's just, the most excitement you get is from the sheriff himself. He's more animated about the fact that these casinos have been than the people who actually work there. It's hey, we've been in this. Sheriff's like, what? Throw blocks. And that's a guy who he basically was making a career at this point playing sheriff. So he actually showed up to act, and maybe it was because he didn't have to, play off of the Rat Pack, and I have a feeling at that point there's probably some sort of memo to everyone, is that you don't out-act Sinatra. Sinatra's like, well, I'm not going to act, and everyone's like, well, I guess we better tone it down tone down the energy level by about 75%.
Yeah. The thing that really surprised me about this movie, just kind of the out of timeness of it, is Vegas 1960 is really small. Like, it's just, you see these big casinos, and they're just like 1-story buildings with like really, it looks like a retirement home or something. Yeah. I don't know. And you've got these I'm not. I don't know. It just doesn't look like.
Wasn't Vegas supposed to be just like a meeting point between LA and Denver or something like that? It was just like, we'll just have this.
I don't know.
Watering hole there.
I mean, you're barely a decade from Bugsy Siegel really, turning Vegas into what it was. So yeah, it still was very small, and yet at the time, I mean, it was still a major entertainment center. I mean, you did have the Rat Pack playing there, and they were pretty big celebrities for their time, and yet. You have, it's so small.
But there's nothing in the plot or the story to distract you from the fact that it's small. So it all feels very boring and small. But I don't know.
Yeah, they overplayed it with the 6 or 5 casinos, as opposed to the next movie, which is 3.
Yeah. In a sense, Vegas gets too big to where you can't knock over all the casinos in one fell swoop. So,
and when you see those money bags, there's teeny. So not much going in and out.
That's true. It's for the suppose this big hall they have, the bags are awfully small.
And that's the other thing. Like the safes are just these small one thing safes, and it's like okay, that's what we're breaking into.
Here's our take: $50.
Okay, so they were just opened. So
they don't explain it very well. They explain it once, but they cross the wires with it doesn't make any sense.
No.
The lights and that's
just
the things
cage
for the
doors.
safe.
That's what I thought. That was
the
the cage doors.
Yeah, the doors that get you into the rooms where they're doing.
Don't they open the safe?
It wasn't even for the safe.
Apparently, we're just they all coincidentally happen to be open at the time because of. They were counting money in there or something like that. Because apparently, you go in and
that breaks a number one rule of storytelling. You don't have coincidence happen in favor of the main characters. That happens all over the place in this movie, though.
Maybe that was one of the pages they tore out. Nope.
Wait a minute. Okay. So I'm talking about they were counting the money, but then the money was still in the safe, so they leave it open. When they
don't think about it too much. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's the whole point of the pacing is to lull you into a state of
malaise where you're not even thinking about it.
Where you're not thinking about things. You're like, oh, they're okay. Now they're robbing.
And then you wake up and they robbed it. Oh, okay. And then can we get into Act 3 now?
Well, I was about to say though, it was interesting how when you have Tony dying, and he gets a never the look, and he falls over. I do like, and this gets to where you could see how this could have been a better film, which is the reaction between Jimmy and Danny. Because Danny, he wants to go, and this is where Sinatra's actually, trying to act just a little bit. He's trying to rush over to the body because he has that he feels for what Tony's going through, and Jimmy is like no, it's just going to be a coincidence. He's thinking in terms of the heist, the money, and Danny's thinking
we got to get away,
and Danny's thinking the guy, and it strikes me as the difference between the sergeant who knows his men and the lieutenant who's kind of like he's a casualty of the operation.
It's like suddenly the movie's doing something. You get that feeling of he's dying in the middle of the street and they can't go there.
We can't have that. It'll stop.
They just run up and they look at the body and it's like, oh well, okay. Yeah. There goes the drama. They're not running off wanting to look at him, but they have to get away. And
now we're in the third act.
Oh, thank goodness!
And I absolutely love the casino owners meeting because it's like they had to sit around and for the audience's benefit, they have to tell themselves things they already know.
Yeah.
So it's like right there with the whole, I don't need to say this, but we'll say it anyway. We all have other partners. Oh yeah, we got to worry about them too. And it's like,
if you guys did this in Act 1, you wouldn't have to worry about it now. And we'd have antagonists for this movie.
And they could have done it by having Duke Santos say, I'm going to go over and talk to these guys because I'm a consultant now or some nonsense like that.
Yeah.
And rather than saying, we just happen to know this Duke Santos guy, so let's go ahead and coincidentally bring him in. And
coincidentally, he was in town.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
but then he becomes the magical, basically main character of they're not, because you don't see the other guys. Like you don't see them at all. You just see him going around looking for them. And it's like
he's not even going. He's sitting in a room. He's waiting for phone calls.
Yeah, just waiting for a phone call of somebody to tell him where they are, which surprisingly happens.
I feel like they mock this in the remake at the end when Danny tells Terry, when he convinces Terry to basically, give up tests to find out what happened to the money, he says, I know this guy and he knows what goes on and I'll have your money in 72 hours. And Terry goes, you know a guy. He's like, forget that. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
So, but you do get that great scene where when he figures out what's going on because he happens to, he puts a couple of coincidences together coincidentally. And then he goes and he confronts, Danny and Sam, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, and he's sitting there, blackmailing them, talking about how he wants half. And Frank Sinatra walks behind him, and he does this great thing where he picks up. He's kind of like fingering. You noticed that?
Yeah, I noticed that.
It was so awesome. That was like that's what this film
what's
could
the
have
thing?
been.
I didn't pick up.
Tell him.
If I'm paying attention, so Frank walks behind the coffee table or whatever the table, while what's his name? Duke Santos. Duke Santos is sitting down, and he picks up a bottle, or he grabs a bottle, like he's gonna pick it up and hit him over the head with it.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that's what he was gonna do,
Yeah.
or threaten him or something. Is that what the scene you're talking about?
Yeah, it's like he starts fingering it and then he picks it up.
Yeah,
and it's like he's gonna whack him. And what I love about it is the fact
I was in a coma at this point.
Oh,
is that
that's when I got up on my seat. I was like, yes, do it.
Yeah,
do a thing. Something's happening.
But I also like it because it's not as though that he just puts it down like whatever. It's the fact that is the moment when Duke Santos gets up. It's kind of like he senses that this is about to happen.
Yeah, and
he's not going to let it happen. So he's just so casual. It's like he walks in the room and he's the one in charge. And Danny Ocean's like, well, I'm going to get back in charge by taking out Duke Santos. And Duke Santos is like, oh, it's like, you're an amateur, I'm a pro. And he just strides. And he has got that honey of a farewell gesture where he snaps and waves. And I wish they had focused on, because I would love to duplicate how he does that, because it's so neatly done. And it's just like it's like once he's cracked this, it's and they could have played with the notion of the difference between the professional and the amateurs. It's like, yes, they get away with this stuff because they're amateurs in a way, and nobody expects it. But Santos as the pro is like, I'm going to make the most of this. And he really puts the squeeze on these guys. He puts them in this incredibly difficult position, which then they get out of because it's all of a sudden Dean Martin comes up with it. He said, I've got an idea. I'll tell you on the way. And we're just going to dump the money in the coffin. What?
I was like, how is this? Okay.
Yeah, it's like a perfect microcosm of the film. They're just making it up as they go along.
No one's gonna check the casket again before they ship it out.
Apparently not. Yeah. Even though it's like not sealed up, I mean, they don't have to remove any nails to open it up,
right? Because they put the top rack on, but sideways. Yeah. Like,
and
just leave it open.
So they're not gonna check it before they cremate it. Like,
and they had the laziest plot device where Josh, Sammy Davis Jr.'s character, takes $10,000 for Tony's widow.
Yeah.
And apparently he drops a money band because that is the confirmation.
Which happens off screen.
Well, how does it happen off screen? Because it happens in the room, because the guy from the funeral is like, the whatever they called. He says, I found this on the floor next to the coffin. And yet we see in silhouette, we see, Sammy takes the money, puts it in his boiler suit, jacket, and that's it. Yeah. And yet somehow, I guess, as he's walking out, he's like, "Oh, make sure I count it. That's actually $10,000." And okay, so it is.
And I guess with the coffin open, he didn't check that there was something inside if the money's on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what the heck?
What's this?
It's lazy. It's lazy. It's so lazy.
At least they're trying to do something where they're putting them in some kind of peril, but something goes against them. But it's a clunky thing.
And Cesar Romero is so good at projecting that kind of casual menace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he's not even necessarily being menacing in that traditional mustache twirling
It's
way.
too bad he wasn't the bad guy for the rest of the movie.
Yes. I can't help but wonder if maybe the pages that Sinatra's tearing out is because Cesar Romero had a bigger role. And he's like, nope, nobody's going to overshadow me. Rip.
Yeah.
So
It was definitely fun to watch the third act with him going against some.
Yeah.
Because you get that push and pull. You get that tug of war going on.
Like a movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like a movie.
a movie's threatening to break out in this movie. So, do we even need to wrap up this movie? Or
That's
because it kind of just peters out. It's like,
puttered out just like
I
the
will
movie
say
does.
that when they were in the chapel and was it the preacher, the pastor, whatever was he praying? And they were like, they all turned. What's that noise? The cremation, and then they all turned, and as they were turning, the words, I can't remember exactly the words, but it was like the reigns and the justice and the unjust or something like that. Anyway, the words matched the emotions
Oh yeah,
that were going on, and that I noticed. I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but I guess it wasn't that.
You did a thing, movie. You did.
But I thought it was pretty cool. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's good. And that's I've got half a page of notes on this movie. It's a 2-hour movie.
I took more just to stay awake.
Jeez. Okay, let's move on.
I saw that movie last night, half of it, and then this morning, the other half.
You fell asleep in the middle, didn't you? Yeah.
I worked from 8 o'clock yesterday morning to 10 o'clock last night.
Yeah. Well, now you know if you're ever suffering from insomnia, which film to put on.
And I had to rent that film.
Now our review of Ocean's 11, 2001.
Right away, you see how so much better of a movie this is because they have such an efficient introduction to Danny Ocean. You discover that he's a criminal. You discover that he is divorced. You discover that he is emotionally tied, and it happens in like 2 minutes, and with just him, in front of the screen talking to these voices off screen.
Yeah,
and it's something that. You have to watch it a few times to kind of appreciate how effectively they encapsulate his character in just that one scene.
And
definitely, good.
Well, there's just the added element of they've got some more backstory to him that he's coming out of jail.
That's what I was going with that. Like from what I learned in class, it follows the formula of establishing this character's world.
Yeah, in one scene. So yeah,
way better.
And then you immediately see him building the crew. It's not one of this, they're already half assembled. He first goes to Bernie Mac's character, and it's like...
And by the way, they do it in half an hour and not an hour.
Yes.
And they establish why they're doing it. It's like, I mean, I guess we understand why later, especially with Tess showing up, like that's why he's doing it.
Yeah.
But also with the other character, he lost his real estate from the antagonist that we find out.
Ruben's character.
Yeah. So we see why earlier or even at all.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the first movie, I don't know why they did it, other than just because they wanted to do something fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun. They need money.
It's fun to hang around with your friends and maybe rob a casino.
I mean, they
or 5.
You can see how they could have done it, which was that, Jimmy needs the help. He's like a lieutenant. He needs the sergeant to kind of, help him out because he doesn't know how to do it. He doesn't want to be under his mother's thumb. And so he asks Danny to help him out. And Danny's like, sure. Because apparently Danny is, the guy. And so he puts it together. But again, you have to read this into it and assume it and make it up. And it's, again, the film doesn't bother. But here you get it right away. Danny Ocean's out, and he's, within hours, he's already putting together his crew.
Yeah, and within the next scene, he's to a casino. We see him looking at Bernie Mac's character, and it's clear Danny's up to something.
And you understand that he's been plotting this in prison.
Yeah.
So it's like he had time to think about it.
Right.
Right. So we know.
Yeah, he probably talked to people, he's been maybe following news and everything. And so he goes and he sees Frank Catton, who is not Frank Catton at the casino. It's such a nice thing about how, he does that and the knowing looks. I mean, in this sense, the actors in this movie are actually, honest to goodness, acting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Bernie Mac, who's he's a comedian who gets into acting, but he's so good.
They're characters, like they have their own things. Like
Bernie Mac, for example, he's a con man, like, or he's a hustler.
Yes.
Yeah, they've all got their thing.
They got their thing.
Yeah. And aside from that, they've got like a Cockney accent for Basher.
Yeah, Don Cheadle's character.
John Cheadle, yeah, and they've got the Mormon twins from up in Utah, and they've got the back and forth thing.
You got Lewis and Dell, the twitchy electronics guy.
You do have the Mama's Boy. The Mama's Boy is still there.
Is Matt Damon?
Yeah, Matt Damon. He's the Mama's Boy.
Yeah,
yeah. He's under the thumb of his. Not so much under the thumb, but he's trying to get out of the shadow of his dad.
Do we see that later on in the next movie though? I think that's what it was. Okay, that's what I'm thinking. Okay.
Which I've read apparently is very much like the original Ocean's 11 in the sense that it was like, hey, we're going to do a sequel, and they got everyone to do it. We're going to do it over. We're going to go do this in Italy, and so why don't you come out and hang out and get drunk?
It shows for the second one. Oh, this one though is firing on all cylinders. Like it's just,
yes, it is.
Yeah, so. I was going to save this for later, but the way that they filmed this movie, it was very hard. Like Soderbergh, the director, lost sleep over how are we going to do these shots and how are we going to make it look as smooth and fun as possible. That's how you make a smooth, easy viewing experience for an audience.
You lose sleep over it.
Yeah, you lose sleep over it. But you work your butt off for it. But for the original Ocean's 11, they were not doing that. They're like, let's just have a fun time. And for the audience, you're having the opposite of that.
There were a lot of wide shots, or at least mid shots in the first one, whereas the second one, you get more close-ups. I mean,
I was going to point that out.
Development of the cinematography over 40 years, of course. But
the first one is almost completely wide shots of just all these people standing around in these rooms doing nothing. And then, the phone rings.
And that was the cinematography at the time, right?
Yeah, basically, but it's kind of stretched to its limit. Like I don't even remember any close-ups in that movie. There
was one, because I was like, where's the behind the shoulder
over the shoulder
shots, the shoulder shots. There was, I think it was between Frank and Angie.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna mention that, but that's about
basically
all that I could pinpoint.
I love the transition that they do, which is that after he meets with Frank, Danny calls his parole officer and he's like, I haven't been drinking. We've already seen him have a drink. No, sir, I wouldn't think of leaving state. Next scene, boom, he's in California.
This irony in this dialogue. The dialogue in this movie and just the cleverness to it and the subtext and double meanings and all this stuff. There's an actual writer for this movie.
and if you want star power, you get it in the next scene, which is where you're introduced to Brad Pitt's character Rusty.
Yeah,
and how I love how they do the character quirks. You see this throughout the movie. He's constantly eating. And it's always like this junk food, fries and onion rings and whatnot. And he's making his living now. He's teaching actors how to play cards, and you get that wonderful scene in the club where he's teaching it to Joshua Jackson and Holly Marie Combs and Topher Grace. They're playing these dumbed down versions of themselves, and it's one of my favorite lines is when he's actually trying to teach them something, and he's just getting so annoyed with the fact that these guys are idiots. Like when they're sitting there trying to do their bets and they're trying to be their snarky Hollywood selves, and he's like, no, that's not how you do it. And then I just love the climax with Topher Grace, like, check it out. All res. And it's a garbage. It's just like
for a second I thought it was a straight, and I'm like, I thought the punchline was that he didn't even recognize that he had a straight.
But it's like they're all sitting there high-fiving each other like, he just won an Oscar or something like that. And Rusty's like, oh my life.
Yeah, this scene bugged my brother when he saw it, when George Clooney comes in specifically, because it's like, okay, this is very clearly George Clooney, and here he is with all these other actors playing themselves. Why doesn't anybody recognize this is George Clooney? I don't know. It kind of destroys the reality of the movie for him. Like I think specifically referencing in Ocean's 12 where Julia Roberts.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
Roberts.
That was the worst.
Yeah.
I hated that, especially since it doesn't even come up as a thing in the first one, and all of a sudden people start making an issue of it in the second one, including the cast, the crew that has already met her, like Linus. It's just so annoying. But and I like how they do it subtly, which is that Rusty's at the bar, he's having a drink between hands.
Which I want to point out, the match cut there is amazing, where it goes from him at the table just had it with these guys, and he goes and takes a drink, and then it right on the I think it's right on when he takes a drink, it cuts to him at the bar in the strip club, and the lighting changes and all that, but they match cut it perfectly.
And you could tell how kind of deep powered he is, or how drained he is by this. That Danny Ocean sneaks right past him in that scene, and he doesn't even notice. So he goes in there, and he's there, and there's Danny talking to the actors. And I have to say, I can't. I've seen this movie so many times, and I still can't figure out if they kind of subtly and almost telepathically decide to con the actors. They set up a con.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's what I always get from that scene. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, they're playing them.
Yes,
they work together so many times. They know, like, yeah, we're gonna do a thing
intuitively. It sets up that chemistry so nicely, and then you get that scene. I don't recall ever seeing that scene, that shot before, where you are watching characters drive from. Back.
Mounted on the back.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's been done before, but it was
that one shot where they're driving down the street and you see the car center screen and it doesn't move. We're locked to the car. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I
mean, it's totally necessary to do it that way, but it's
really stylish.
It is very
very smooth and economic. Is I'd say economic is the first word I'd use to describe this movie. And then stylish is the second one. Like all the transitions, all the shot choices, and like that shot of George Clooney coming up the escalator, coming into the shot where it's all
the music
orange. Yeah,
I mean, the music is so
the music is amazing.
So, Danny tells Rusty he wants to knock off 3 casinos. Rusty knows instantly that they're Terry Benedict's casinos. And he's like, "Are you sure?" And Danny's like, "Yes, I'm sure." And then it's really interesting how Danny, he's incorporating Rusty in the plans, and Rusty talks about all these cons they have to pull. Mm-hmm. And this to me, and I was going to say this for Criss Cross, it gets to me that the fundamental difference in terms of these movies is that this is it really a heist movie, or is it a con movie that is conning you into believing it's a heist movie? Because it really is so much more about the conning than about the heist. Because he rattles off all these cons that he had got to do this, and plus the biggest Ella Fitzgerald you've ever seen. So.
I kind of like that of they leave you in the dark a little bit if you don't know what all these things are, but you have this sense that they know what they're. So on my everyman expert scale, this would fall more on the expert side, but they're doing it for like this cool suave thing of like, oh, this is fun, this is cool. Mm-hmm. Like they know what they're doing with it.
And they immediately start conning everyone who is not part of the crew. And you see this with when they go to Ruben for the funding. And he's sitting there, we're going to rob his casinos. And he's like, it can't be done. You want to know about the 3 greatest things? And you get that great, the 3 scenes culminating in John Cusack getting gunned down in the 1980s.
Yeah. Going over the most successful heists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 3 gets tackled. Number 2, he gets, clobbered in the face. And number 1, he gets shot down. And, which also means
the money flies everywhere,
which also demonstrates the stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That security doesn't play.
Did not exist in the first movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and then, but you guys are pros, whatever. And then, and so they leave it for the end that this is about, Terry Benedict, and Ruben's like, Terry Benedict, you guys want to go up against Terry Benedict? You're nuts. You got mine. He's been conned into supporting it because they know just how. They didn't go up to him and say, "Hey, we're looking to knock over Terry Benedict," which might have been more of like, "Well, I don't know if that's a good idea," but they've let Ruben decide that he wants to do this because he's so bitter about losing his casino.
Here we are, probably about, what is it? Maybe like 15 minutes in, and we're setting up our antagonist. This is perfect structure. Take notes, Ocean's 11, 1960. This is how you do it. Anyway, so we're setting up our antagonist, and he's set up as this formidable character.
And it's funny how we learn so much about him before we even actually meet him.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about him because he's this formidable figure. But we, of course, then also get the introductions to the other characters. You get the Mormon twins. You get to see Livingston Dell. You get to see Badger. And the Badger one I love the best because, one, it's, Don Cheadle. He looks like he's just having a blast playing this character. He's just like, the accent, which I understand a lot of British people, find very offensive because it's not proper Cockney, but he's having fun with it. You also get to see Steven Soderbergh because he plays one of the crew members.
Oh, where?
When they're blowing the when Badger blows the door.
Yeah, okay.
Soderbergh is one of the.
I didn't even notice
the guy
that.
with the glasses, and then of course you get to see how convincing Rusty can be because he shows up pretending to be an ATF agent. And he manages literally Badger's in custody and Rusty sneaks him away. So
yeah, he's like, it'll be good working with proper villains again.
Exactly. So you get the respect that you get to see on two levels. Why why Rusty deserves the respect that he does. Other criminals respect him, and we see how he convinces these police officers to basically turn him over to him.
Yeah,
and then they get away. And so we're 30 minutes in at this point, and we get kind of a description of what it is they're trying to do. In the original, we have to get halfway through the movie before we get to this.
Yes,
and here
absolutely.
it's we're barely 30 minutes in, and we're already learning what this is about. And they've already assembled the crew, and I feel like we know the crew as a crew better than in the original movie. Because they're not just these anonymous figures. Like you could argue the parallels that George Clooney is doing Sinatra and Brad Pitt's doing the Dean Martin and Don Cheadle's doing the Sammy Davis Jr. But the other ones, they're distinctive characters. I mean, are we really going to confuse Scott Conn and Casey Affleck with
random guy in suit number 3?
Exactly. No, we're not because they're distinctive figures by this point. I love how you have Scott, you have Casey Affleck's character. I think it was talking to Saul Bloom, Carl Reiner's character, about how well he could do in Provo.
Yeah, that's great. My brother was laughing at that. I mean, because he didn't go to BYU, which is in Provo, but he went to BYU Idaho, and like he's got that whole coach culture ingrained, and he was laughing at that. But so then we're introduced to Matt Damon's character Linus, and he's a pickpocket on the train. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was like something with the frame rate where on the train where it was like slower. And this is something that I'd bring up to Stefan if he were on, but he picks the guy's pocket, walks off the train, and then as he's passing Ocean's character in the street, he pickpockets him and puts his card in his pocket, and he's like, that was a good pull. Meet me at Ginty's bar or whatever it said.
I feel like so much of this movie is Soderbergh showing off what an awesome filmmaker he is.
Yeah.
I can do this style. I can do this style. I can do this style.
Yeah, he knows his toolkit and he knows when to use.
And he has a range
things
that you rarely see a filmmaker display in a single film.
And like I said, like he lost sleep over, how do I do this scene? What shots do I use for this? And to just make it feel like this smooth, enjoyable experience that you're not really thinking about when you watch it, but like you just feel those stylistic transitions and shot choices, and it's like butter. Whereas I don't know what metaphor to use for Ocean's 11, but it's
water, I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe ice cubes.
Maybe.
All together. But what I like is when they do when they explain it, it's more about the challenges of the heist.
Yeah.
Rather than how they're going to do it. So we, as an audience, we don't have it explained to us that they're going to, blow up a pylon and then.
Yeah, and I think this movie has as much of its DNA traceable back to the first Mission Impossible movie than it does to the original Ocean's 11. Like the whole heist sequence, like they set up the stakes first of these are all the things we have to get past. And then at the end of the scene, you have Saul go, well, I forget the line, but
we're going to do this.
He takes his ulcer pill.
Yeah. We're going to do this. And the ulcer pill gets to something that they do which I'm going to return to a bit about how they said one of the ways they're setting him up, but like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And, and we're going to do all this. And yeah, we are. Okay.
Takes the ulcer pill.
Yeah, it takes the ulcer pill then. So, and then we get the scouting montage, and then which is interrupted by that great scene where Bernie Mac is negotiating with the car salesman.
Man. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I cannot see them ever doing another one in this series, because without him, he is just so. I mean, you can see, I feel like Scott Conn and Casey Affleck are replaceable, and maybe Eddie Jemison as Livingston Dell. But I mean, Bernie Mac is just so
iconic.
Yeah.
I just want to do a pickup real quick, just before they do the briefing for what measures that they have to get past in the safe and all that. Ocean's like, well, I'm not going to lie, this is high stakes, and if you want to leave, like, have some food, have a nice time, but we're about to get started. If you're in, come on in the house. And then the only one that stays outside is Linus, Matt Damon's character, and Elliot Gould is like, walks up to him and he's like, so you're from Chicago, Bobby Caldwell's kid? And he's like, it's nice there, isn't it? He's like, get in the goddamn house.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, he really does. It's a great moment, which sells just how intimidated he feels being with this crew.
Yeah.
These guys are all like not just pros, but they're famous in their field.
I more read it as like he was too cool for school type thing. Like he didn't want to, but
as if he was scared. Like he couldn't he couldn't match that level that they were about to pull.
Especially since he's off on his own, and everyone else is they're kind of socializing with one another. Chin he's the only one who doesn't really socialize because he doesn't seem to know English all that well, so he's sitting there playing building cards and everything.
Yeah,
but you get that great scene during the briefing where he asks a question in Japanese and Rusty responds like he's totally fluent in Mandarin.
And there's a reaction of Don Cheadle in the background where he's like, "What? You know that?" Like, anyway, but then we get to the montage where
they're setting up, and we see them getting the band, and then of course the montage culminates with the scouting work that Linus is doing, and this is where we actually get to meet Terry Benedict, and Andy Garcia is so good that he doesn't walk, he struts. And it's such a great way of he's the master of the world. He strides in. People are constantly giving him stuff. He's checking it off. I mean, you get the person. This is a person who controls his universe.
Yeah,
A-type.
Yeah, very very much an A-type. And then after you get that introduction to it by seeing an explanation of his day, you get Linus conveys the sense of how. The more he's learned, the more scared he's getting.
Yeah, he's like I said, a machine.
Yeah, you heard what he did to that guy, where he didn't only drive him out of business. He drove his brother-in-law out of business too. We really want to go up against this guy, but then we get to see the best part of his day, which is when the girlfriend comes downstairs.
Tess.
Tess, and she's striding downstairs. I love Brad Pitt's reaction because it is perfect. It is, he doesn't overdo it. You see it's just changing his expression. It's like, oh.
It's just clear there's something up, and this is going to come up later.
Yeah, this is what we're here.
And you don't see, because it cuts away as you see, Julie Roberts striding down and walking past, and Linus is like, well, I haven't caught her name yet, and what Brad Pitt has done, he's turned his back so she can't see him, and then he says, "It's Tess," and then we get the great confrontation where we learn exactly what this is about for Danny Ocean.
Yeah,
and there's that great line about how tell me this isn't about Tess, and it's not entirely about Tess. Well, if it becomes between Tess and the money, what are you going to choose? Because Tess doesn't split 11 ways.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's like, it's not going to happen. He's confident, but you also get the impression that, he's maybe just a little bit overconfident that he's going to pull this off. So, but one of the things I noticed, and maybe I'm reading into it, but the way that they shoot Terry Benedict and Tess, there's always this sense of space between them.
Oh yeah.
And you don't get that, like when Tess first encounters Danny, it's because he touches her, and she momentarily thinks it's Terry, and then she realizes it's Danny, and maybe it's just very subtly done, or maybe again I'm trying to read into it with that, but there's like when Terry Benedict shows up, Danny meets Tess at the restaurant where she's going to have dinner with Terry, and Danny is talking to her because Terry's being held up by Saul, but doing Lyman Zerga, and they're doing their banter back and forth, and then Terry shows up, and he sits opposite of Tess, and Soderbergh has it framed to where it is. Would that be a wide shot where you see Terry on one end, you see Tess at the other, and Danny, he's standing, but he's standing by Tess, and the framing is implying about how that Tess and Danny are closer than the guy she's currently dating. Yeah. Even though she's already, she's already divorced from him and all that stuff. And it's something that about how the space that Benedict has from everyone is that, it's like the scene just before then where they're in the gallery and she leans in to kiss him and he's like, no. They're always watching. Yeah.
Yeah. So. And when he comes to the table, when Danny comes to the table, she's like, "You're 30 seconds late. I was going to send a search party," and then she sees it. So that's great, of just a little throwaway line to give some characterization for the villain.
Yeah, it's about he's like a Swiss watch, very precision. Very precision. But you then get that wonderful scene with the destruction of the casino, and I love how it's the music. You don't actually, hear the dialogue. You see Ruben, you see Tess, you see Terry, you see, and in the crowd, there's Danny and Linus. I love how, as they're getting ready to demolish the building, everybody in the crowd turns except for Danny and Linus.
It's very Hitchcock. It's very Strangers on a Train with the guy in the tennis crowd.
Yeah, it's again, Soderbergh's just showing off. He's just like he's just showing all the tools he has, all the techniques he has, and how he can do any one of these. It's like this is his resume.
Yeah, he's simultaneously showing off, but also just using those tools to make a smooth experience for the audience. And it's, I don't know, he's not using long takes and stuff like that, where I think for directors it's just a way to show off. But
and of course in the process of doing this smooth take, he starts to introduce honest to goodness complications. Yeah. There's tension in this. First of all, the destruction
like a heist movie.
Yeah.
Suspense movie.
The destruction of the casino accidentally exposes the way that Basher was planning on knocking out the power.
Which I think is ironically exactly the plot of the first movie, which goes through without a hitch, where that was their whole thing. They were going to shut off the power, take all the stuff and run. And there's also a line in the briefing scene where Matt Damon's like, "So it's like a smash and grab job." And he's like, little more complicated than that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized, but you're right. This probably is kind of a diss of the original heist. So, but of course, there's this made up device, a pinch. So we got to which can create it.
It's not too made up though. It's an EMP, which
I don't think
it's basically like the bomb without the bomb. I don't know if they have that. But
that's what I mean by
EMPs do exist though. So.
Well, I mean, EMPs do exist, but I don't know if a device exists that just generates an EMP.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And of course, it's conveniently close enough to where they can drive and go get it, and then you get the second complication, which is that Yen is injured when they're doing the heist. His hand is injured, and of course, he's the one who's.
Well, they set this up the best way possible, just like. Just by entertaining you with the annoyingness of these two
Scott
Mormon
Conn
twins,
and
they he's like, please don't leave me in the van with them, and then you can just see him in the back, like his head down like this, and eventually it just gets to him, and he runs out, and it's like the kid waiting in the car for his mom at the grocery store, and then finally he has to go in.
Yeah, gets bored, and Casey Affleck and Scott Conn have some of the best chemistry in this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, you totally buy it. They don't look anything alike, and yet you totally buy they're brothers.
It would not at all surprise me if they improved a lot of their dialogue.
Yeah,
but
you would have to. You can't. I mean, I don't think you can write that. What they did.
Yeah, because it sounds so much more natural that way. But in the process of stealing the pinch, Yen gets injured, and of course he's the one who's his physical health is the one that matters the most because of what he has to do.
Yeah, he gets his hand smashed. Yeah, I don't know if he said that.
And then we find out that Danny's been red flagged, so now he can't do his part of it because as soon as he shows up at the casino, he's to be arrested. And then we get this implication, and this is, I think, a really neat misdirect that Ruben may be a little ill, and of course you got to worry about not Ruben, Saul. Saul might be a little ill, and which you get the impression that maybe that's because he's he's an old guy, and we see him taking the ulcer pills. We've seen him seem a little distracted, like maybe he's not up for this.
I'd like to point out we're halfway through the movie, and the heist has begun.
Yes,
we're not in the original Ocean's 11. They just they get to the midpoint. They're like, okay, this is what we got to do, and then I don't even remember what happens. They're just like lazing about until it happens, and then it happens at like 75% mark, and then
we get 20 minutes of a garbage truck, making the same turn into 5 different casinos.
I guess they show the guy checking the electric boxes, but it's like, I don't know.
Conflict is better.
Oh gosh, yes. And so you get to the heist, and did you see how in the shot of Fight Night they have both Henry Silva and Angie Dickinson?
I hadn't picked that up, but I saw that. I watched a YouTube video that pointed that out. So
I thought it was a nice nod to the original, and yet they didn't go so far as to try to awkwardly insert them as characters.
No, yeah.
So it's kind of like we're being respectful to the movie, even though we're not really being respectful to the movie.
Yeah. There's quotes from the actors that are not very diplomatic about the original movie.
But I thought it was nice that they Henry Silva is still alive at the time, and Angie Dickinson still is, but they included them in the movie as some of the celebrities in the audience watching the boxing match, which of course is an important part of the plot because one, that maximizes the amount of money that's going to be available at the casino that night, and two, it creates maximum opportunities for disruption. Yeah,
I just wanted to jump back to Tess and Danny real quick. Their relationship, like this is the heart of the movie.
Yeah, and
they had that element kind of in the first one, but they did nothing with it. And
right.
Anyway, but some of the dialogue that they have is, does he make you laugh? He doesn't make me cry. Warning Tess about Terry, like what he's like. That'll just drop her and that kind of stuff. And he's like, I'm not joking, Tess. He's like, I'm not laughing, Danny. I don't know, just I am slaughtering this dialogue, but the writing is just amazing.
It gets to the fact that if you were to take the Danny Tess relationship out of this movie, it would really diminish it.
Yeah.
You could take away the Danny Beatrice relationship for the
there'd be nothing. Yeah.
It's nothing. It's superfluous.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's functioning
And
so much more upon Danny's relationship with the men in the original movie. The fact that they were all, war buddies.
Which I think points out the skill of the screenwriter for this one, because they didn't take things whole cloth and just insert them. They saw opportunities that weren't taken in the first movie and just like extended them. It's like, okay, we've got this marriage between these two, and it's not going well because of what he's doing. And it's like, okay. And also there's no antagonist in the first one. So we need to insert a strong antagonist, and then might as well connect those two, like have her now with the antagonist. And yeah.
My only thing with that was, why was she with him in the first place?
Yeah, I think they
like, what did she see
it's kind of that line of, does he make you laugh? He doesn't make me cry. He's a rebound for her, and he's safe. Basically, like she
thinks he is.
She thinks he is.
And for her,
I want to know the prequel. Like, what is Danny's relationship to, what's his name?
Rusty?
No, not Rusty. Antagonist.
Terry.
Terry. Thank you. Before this,
there's none.
And how did these three know each other?
Well, Terry meets Danny when in the restaurant scene.
Right, but
for the first time.
For the first time. So, like, just this is where my mind is going. Like, where did Julia Roberts' character meet Terry?
Oh, gotcha.
How did these how are these three in this love triangle?
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting. This is a complete sidebar, but to have an Ocean's 10 where you see, like, it'd probably have to be a bank heist because they can't do a casino one because they set up in this movie like it's never been done. But bank heist in New York, because that's where they said that the one that got him in jail was
New Jersey.
Oh, Jersey. Was it? Okay.
Because when he was walking out of the prison, it's New Jersey DOC.
Okay, gotcha.
They imply what the crime was. It wasn't a bank. It was stealing Incan ceremonial masks.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There's that. It was Incan ceremonial. There's money if you know how to move them, and the implication was that Rusty was skeptical, Danny was confident, and Danny was wrong. I mean,
anyway, what we sorry before you get into it, they could use that to, in the third act, set up the meeting between Terry and her.
Oh yeah, something, because it's like Terry does know about Danny because of Tess, obviously, but like, why is Tess with Terry?
Yeah. She's an employee at the art gallery, and they establish, again, that restaurant scene, which is, they do so much and it's so amazing, that she is an expert on art, and that, Danny, in addition to loving her, respects her knowledge of art, even though he kind of, mocks it a little bit with the way he kind of is. He's focused more upon who slept with who and who had syphilis and all that stuff. And she's like, yeah, and they also painted paintings, but that in a sense, she becomes part of his collection.
Yeah, you have to remind me. I'm not remembering the art that they brought up in the movie.
It was
for her.
It starts with, she works up the gallery.
Yeah,
and then you have the scene where, and it's a dialogueless scene. It starts as dialogueless scene because you have the music playing over, talking between them. It's like, apparently that Terry's acquired another artwork. There's a handshake and they're standing in front. It's right. It's where it leads to she trying to kiss him and him saying, "There's always someone watching, so I can't kiss you."
Was that the only one?
That's where they set up what she does. But then there's a scene where Danny talks to her and they talk about art for a little bit. But,
they could, but I mean, my gosh, this cast is so
huge.
stacked.
It is. Yeah.
It's like
I think they use her as to the necessary extent that they need her.
Yeah.
They could do more, but she's in there enough to give the movie the heart that it needs.
They also set it up for the next, whichever movie it was, where they steal the art piece in Italy or whatever.
Yeah.
And the second one.
So, yeah.
So but now you have the setup where they need to get the codes, and this is when they sacrifice Bernie Mac's character in order to put Linus in proximity to Terry, and I just that scene in the room between Matt Damon and Bernie Mac is, I think, my favorite in the entire movie, because the way that they create an opportunity for a scuffle, and it's driven by the Frank's bitterness, or pretense of bitterness about how he's being treated. Might as well call it White Jack. And then you have Linus's character, the guy he's playing, doing this casual racism, about how, well, the Nevada Gaming Commission's always been okay with color. Oh
no! And then he sneaks around Terry's.
Yeah, gives him a chance to pick Terry's pocket,
grabs him, and
I forgot about that.
And then we get to see where they're leaving the room, and then Bernie Mac kind of lunges at Linus, goes cracker, and Matt Damon's like,
yeah.
It fits so perfectly in with the preceding scene.
Yeah,
where
they play their roles really well, and you can tell the actors are having a fun time.
Oh my gosh, they're having a blast! But we're now we're in the heist where Matt Damon is now he's in the building. He's supposed to be getting out. He's supposed to be being tracked by security, but of course there's a huge distraction with it's first they have the distraction with Lyman having the heart attack, and the thing is, you don't know if this is actually planned or not. This gets to how they're misdirecting it throughout the movie, where you don't know to what degree Saul is faking the illness for the purpose of the heist, and to what degree.
Okay, can I nerd out for a second now?
Go ahead.
About suspense? Okay, I'm going to take a drink first. Okay, so heists. There are two ways to do heists in movies. I'm going to do a video about this at some point. You can either tell them everything up front, which is the way you do suspense. This is the way they do the Mission Impossible heist. And this is how they do the bank heist in this, the vault heist in this one, where they tell you everything about this vault, all the security measures, all the things they have to get past, how you get into this vault. They do suspense. And the best way that they play this off in this movie is when that case is, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but when that case is on top of the box that he has to get out of. It's like he doesn't know it's there, and as soon as he opens that lid, that thing is going to fall off and hit the floor,
setting off the alarms.
Yeah, setting off the alarms, and they've told you all these things, so you are with the characters with it. But there are several twists that they'll do that I'll point out when we get there. But like him faking the heart attack is one where we're left in the dark. And they leave you out of the plan until they reveal what the plan was and what they did at the end. And it's supposed to be a mind-blowing, oh, that's really cool thing. And that's the emotion you get from that one. That's really cool. Suspense one where you're in on what the stakes are from the beginning. You're getting emotional investment. And they play both. They do the core of it, built off of that very strong suspense structure of what do we have to do to get into this vault. And every set of the way there's complications and it doesn't go to plan. And you're like, oh no, don't open the thing's going to fall on the floor. Or, oh, he just got his hand smashed. He's not going to be able to do the thing. All these different things. You're in on the plan.
But at this point, you're wondering if this is another complication or is the plan, and you don't know. Then this is one of the things I absolutely love about this film, is that this is how it's so much more of a con movie, because Soderbergh has conned the audience to the point where they don't know if they're actually seeing the plan or a complication. Yeah. I mean, you figure it out pretty quickly because they of how the film proceeds.
Which is great because it plays both ways until you get to the reveal.
Yeah.
So
it's so neatly done. The word that really kind of gets that I find best describes this movie, if you're reduced to one word, is balance. It balances so many elements. Comedy, suspense, the drama, the romance, and then they're all there to where none of them intrudes on the other. And all of them fit together
This
so
is
perfectly.
filmmaking at its best, to where it just feels easy. Like
Exactly.
Whereas the first one, I hate to dig on it more than we need to, but it's kind of filmmaking at its
Laziest.
Laziest. Yeah, that's a good word for it. And you feel it. Like they took it easy in the filmmaking, and you feel it. It's just this malaise, and this boring, put you to sleep plot that just, there's nothing to it. Like it's, I don't know.
Yeah. Whereas here, it's just it's there's so much going on, and yet it looks so effortless and smooth.
Yeah, exactly. Effortless is a great word.
Yeah. But because Lyman has the heart attack, it distracts from the fact that Linus is sneaking into the elevator shaft, and then you have the pinch going off, and it disrupts the power. And of course, it turns out that Danny, I've totally left out Danny, what happens to him, which is that he's in the casino. He makes himself seen in the casino.
Which is a nice little thing of they set up with Danny and him earlier. They put a red flag on him.
Yeah.
So he can't go into the casino and not be followed. And so Danny can't do the plan anymore. And so they do a little subversion thing, and it works really well, because you've got the tension going of Linus has to be the one to do it, and then up to the point where they reveal, oh, Danny's gonna actually be a part of it too. Like, you've got that tension still. If they had you been in on it with that one, and know that Danny was gonna come in, it would destroy the drama. But they know how to play it, is what I'm saying. They know when to keep the audience, when to keep you in with them, knowing all the stakes and everything, and when to keep you out. So,
and I love how they do it, where you're assuming that Danny's kind of going off the rails here.
Yeah.
And you have that, confrontation. You bring in Bruiser, who's played by Scott L. Schwartz, the ultimate bad guy. Yeah. And he starts to, beat up Danny Ocean. He's like, not yet. It turns out this is all part of Danny's plan. And you also get to the degree to which he's committed to it, because he's sacrificed a portion of his cut.
Which I love the line that starts this scene. He's like, no cameras in this room.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's brilliant, because then that way he can say to Terry, you've had two guys in this room. You've had a guy beating me up. How could I possibly have done this? And you get that a bit in the climactic confrontation between the two of them, which is, so, and of course, this is all entirely by Terry's choice. I mean, he could have put Danny in a room with cameras. He was goaded into choosing to put him into a room that did not. So he can't say with certainty. He can suspect it, but again, there's all this evidence. He had, he thinks he has three guys keeping Danny Ocean under control, and yet Danny's, scurrying in the rafters here, being a gremlin, messing things up for him.
Yeah.
So they get. So when you get that scene where Linus is unpacking his stuff, and he looks up and there's Danny, and Linus has this moment because he wasn't expecting this.
Yeah.
But then you get that nice moment of tension where they take out the guards in front of the vault, and they're getting ready to blow it. And Yen, his hand.
Yeah, this is suspense. Yeah. It's so good.
These tactics would make way more sense with the army guys doing it.
Yes.
Than just normal criminals doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like your bait and switch, or these diversions.
Mm-hmm. Although they seem to have no army related skills in the first movie at all. It's just Sinatra and Dean Martin.
Yeah, they don't see that, but we don't know their backstories. I mean, for all we know, Basher was like ex-British military or something like that. But it's not just that it's suspense. It's the way that they merge in that scene, suspense and comedy. Because Yen is there, he's trying to move his hand.
That's the thing. Like comedy is a great release for suspense, and the tension that you felt of that edge of your seat thing,
click,
makes the perfect setup for a really funny joke where you get in there and he's like, "Where the F you been?"
Yeah. So So then they get to they're in the vault. They begin the setup, and again, you're being calm because you're assuming you're seeing what they're doing, that what they're doing. and you're introduced to it when after the fight's been disrupted, and Tess discovers she has the phone, which allows Rusty to talk to Terry and say, and the guy is robbing you, and he outlines what they're doing, which supposedly is that they're actually not going to steal $163 million. They're going to steal $80 million, and they're going to leave the remainder there and as a hostage. This is how he's and he thinks he's being told how they're going to get out of the vault, or how they're going to get the money out of the vault, which is that they're going to, in effect, blackmail Terry into doing so. And Terry, and again, Andy Garcia I don't think he's ever been nominated for an Oscar, and maybe he's not the world's greatest actor, but he's a good actor. I mean, I thought he was great as the mayor in Ghostbusters, and that was more of a comedic role.
Was he the mayor in the original Ghostbusters?
No, the one they did in 2015.
Okay, that one.
Because you get the best line where oh gosh, I can't think of the actress's name, but she talks about how he's being like the Jaws mayor, and he goes from being this kind of this, and he goes, "I'm not the Jaws mayor," and it's just so well delivered and everything. So, but he's really selling the anger he's feeling, because he has this controlled universe in which he is the master, and now he's lost that control, and he instantly, more than anything else, is determined to get it back.
Yeah.
And he's got his men. He calls the Las Vegas, police. They bring in the SWAT team. He thinks he's gonna beat these guys. And so but he goes along with the plot, and he's like, "Have I conformed everything?" And of course, Tess, by this point, she's kind of figured out what's going on. And I like how she just casually walks up to Rusty. She happens to know where he is, but Terry's determined he's not going to let them beat him, and he's going to play along with it. But he's going to have his men follow the van that's taking the money. He figures that because the crew is still in the vault, so they're trapped, and he didn't agree to let them out. So he figures he's got them beat. He's going to send in the SWAT team to take them out, and then it happens, and the money's gone, and the crew is gone, and he doesn't know how, and it's infuriating him. And yet it's not.
And he even tells her, Julia Roberts' character, to go out of the room because he doesn't want her to see him at this. This is basically the side of himself that Danny has been warning her about, that he doesn't want her to see.
So. And also, and of course, and it's also that, but he also just wants to see him being compromised. Like this is him weak.
Yeah,
this is him.
True.
Yeah, vulnerable, and he thinks he's got this figured out, and he doesn't. And I like how when they explode the money in the van, and you find out that it's ads for hookers, and that's when he makes the connection. And he says, roll back the tape. Does it say Bellagio on the floor? And no, it does not. And we kind of glossed over this, but we see, it's almost like as a background thing, how they set up earlier in the movie, the crew does, a replica of Benedict's vault. Yeah.
And they stage it in a way that they're like, yeah, it's for practice. Or somebody asks, is it for practice? And he's like, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And we even see
it
them
implies that it's going to be for more.
We see them practicing with it.
That's the thing about twists, is you need to have setups earlier on that hint at what's going to happen. So,
and in this sense, it's been made clear enough to us to where we remember it, but but indeed, I mean, probably most of the audience is as surprised as Benedict is that he's actually been watching something else. Yeah,
and so this is where they've kept us in the dark. Of they were the SWAT team, and then Rusty pulls up his hood on the thing, and it's like boom, boom, ba-doop, ba-doo, and they play the music as they're going out with the bags, and it's great.
Yeah,
they did their homework is the biggest thing. Like they did the setups for it. They didn't hide the fact that it's their voices. Like it's the tech guy that's on the other end of the line when they call 911, and it's it was very clear to me that it was Brad Pitt's voice when he's the SWAT
commander.
Yeah.
They don't do that silly thing they do in the original one where they're going to dub in someone else's voice when.
Yeah.
Now Terry's realized that he's been tricked. He is not out $80 million. He's out $160 million, and he goes to the person he strongly suspects is behind it, and there's Danny Ocean getting beaten up in the room still.
Yeah.
And then he figures, well, did you have a hand in this? And Danny's, of course, playing dumb, like, oh. It's kind of equivalent to the scene where Santos confronts Danny and Sam in the original one, where it's like, did you have a hand in this? Whereas, and Danny is able to kind of keep up the pretense of, I don't know what you're talking about. And then, Terry can't think of how Danny would have been involved. So he figures he's going to do the next best thing. He's going to have Danny arrested for a parole violation. Because again, can't leave the state. And as he's walking out, Danny goads him. Did you lose something tonight? And that's when, of course, Livingston tells Tess, who's up in a hotel room, turn on the TV. And so she gets to see exactly how much Terry doesn't care for her. Because what if I told you I can give you back all your money and all you have to do is give up Tess? And he's like, sure.
Which is a great setup for near the end where she says, somebody in your hotel, somebody's always watching.
Yeah.
As he's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so she leaves him and she, recommits to Danny as he's being led away in handcuffs. And he's going to be, another 6 months for a parole violation.
Yeah,
and then we had that great montage. And it's interesting because it's a echo to the montage the climatic scene in the final scene in the original movie where you see
them walking off down the street.
Yeah, here now they just walk, but they're just so they're smiling. They've succeeded
in front of the fountain and I forget which casino, but
and you get the
Claire de Lune.
I
looked it up. Yeah.
So, and then. We jump to 6 months later, and Danny's getting out. You got that great banter between him and Rusty. I hope you were the groom. Ted Nugent called. He wants his shirt back.
Yeah. Do you have a thing? Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of the hotel that they're because it's with the water fountain. So I think it's Bellagio.
It's
just it's Bellagio.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Because I've been there so many times.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And we missed the setup for this earlier of. She calls him a liar, and he's like, "I'm not a liar." What is it? He's like, "I'm not a liar. I'm a thief." And he's like, "You lied about being a thief." And it's like, and anyway, so at the end of it, she's, he comes into the car, and she's like, I can't remember what it was that sets this up, but
the ring, the fact that she said she sold off his ring, but but she still had it,
and so he says, "You liar." She's like, "Thief," and then they ride off into the sunset with the Terry's men following them.
Yeah.
So
and the thing is that there's no suspense there because at this point that they can evade those guys whenever they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's, it's such a nice ending.
Now we go crisscross.
Every once in a while, two films will share a bond to transcend time, space, and even genre. These similarities go down to their DNA. So let's dissect, deconstruct, compare, contrast. It's time to go crisscross.
Crisscross.
Applesauce.
Just have to get it out.
You're the first one that's done that. It should be very obvious. But okay. Yeah, so for crisscross, the first thing that I've got, one movie thinks it's really cool. The other one actually is. I don't know if there's much more to say about that. But.
Well, it's fascinating how, I approach these films and based upon the title and the basic premise, I think of them in terms of their similarities. Mm-hmm. And yet I cannot help as I watch them and think more about how so different they are.
Yeah.
I like I was alluding to earlier, this is less of a the remake is less of a heist movie than it is really a con movie, and in addition to being, of course, an actual honest to goodness movie, as opposed to, a bunch of scenes of
which on top of it though it is an actual heist movie rather than
exactly.
Just let's do one thing and it'll go off without a hit.
I mean, the first one was basically a hangout movie for a bunch of middle-aged white guys.
Yeah.
So,
like you say, it's a movie of jocks who got together. Cool, look, thinks they're cool. And then you see the acting students, the film students, actually putting something together.
Yeah.
So you see the depth between.
Yeah. And of course, the fascinating thing about that is that the director, Louis Milestone, I mean, he was not a novice. He had been working in Hollywood for, I think, a couple of decades by that point.
Yeah.
And yet you would think that this is, it's amateur hour. We're just going to do wide shots. We're, not going to bother, doing the things that make films watchable.
Well, that goes to show that the idea of making a movie for money grab hasn't really gone away, or it's always been around.
Mm-hmm. It's been around a while.
We need some money. Let's make this.
I feel like you could also take it as an example of the limits of charisma of the actors. I mean, you're talking about, of course, you have Frank Sinatra, you have, Dean Martin, you have Sammy Davis Jr., you have Cesar Romero. They're all very charismatic personalities. And I think that's paralleled, not in the same way, but it's paralleled by Clooney and Pitt and Damon and so forth. And yet you see how in one, it's just the charisma. And the second is, yes, and if you connect that charisma to a plot and writing and expert filmmaking, it really
like a movie,
like an actual movie. Exactly. It's like, charisma might get you get you something that people will watch, but it is not a movie make.
Yeah.
But it's like you can actually do things with charisma. You can even profit from charisma. But at the end of the day, is it really a good movie or even a movie? And the answer is no.
Yeah, it's a good segue to my next section on the filmmaking. So what I had is, one is no effort but feels like a slog. One is a ton of effort but feels effortless. So the 1960s. What the heck? What am I saying? The
19sex.
Okay. That's going to be cut out.
No.
Okay.
Well, that one's for our German language viewers.
Yeah. Okay. So the 1961 is an excuse to hang out. And the Soderbergh one, like I said, he lost sleep over getting the right style and just making it a smooth view for the audience. So,
well, at least in 1960, the third act, 1/3 of the movie is a movie. They did what they did their homework. Planned, and they got everything together. Then it made it look like a legit film.
I like that. They think that they were shooting it in sequence, and it's like 2/3 way through, like, oh shoot, we actually have to do a movie. We can't just sit around and have these guys drinking and talking to each other.
Maybe they realized how crappy their heist was, and they're like, okay, maybe let's introduce an antagonist at this point.
Thank goodness we have Cesar Romero on speed dial.
They could cut it down to like a 30-minute short film about how they're escaping after a heist, and Cesar Romero would have to be the main character because I don't know.
Yeah, definitely more camera angles that they played with in the second one, close-ups, and the lighting, the shadows are all were more elaborate than the first. They did have their lightings in the first, but it wasn't as...
Mm-hmm.
And the economy of the storytelling, it just moves.
It just moves.
Yeah.
Conflict-driven.
Actual stakes. Because they establish that, Terry Benedict, not someone to be messed with. If he figures it's them, it's going to be, very, it's going to be, horrible outcomes for them. And he makes that clear when he says, you guys are dead. I'm looking forward to hunting you down. And when he says those, while Garcia sells it with his acting, they've set it up.
Yeah, the entire movie.
Yeah,
He's been this formidable force.
And now what we're seeing is Garcia demonstrating that force has been now focused upon these people, which validates these concerns that they had about going up against him.
I think a good way to sum up the filmmaking mantra for both of them is one of them, the cast had fun. The other one, the audience has fun. So,
and speaking as an audience member, I much more appreciate more the second film for that very reason.
For sure.
It's like, I think about, which one would you rather have been in? I can see how the actors would have all said, oh, yeah, definitely in 1961. But,
I don't know. I would have rather been in the second one.
You're a professional.
Just because of the development, the character development in each, or the character differentiation between the two.
Yeah.
And I don't. I mean, we talked about it earlier. The standard look back then versus how diverse everything is this time around. Not even like race or ethnicity, but like older,
Just
younger
personality.
So it's just more fun.
And of course, I think it's also because they're trying to do more of an ensemble movie as opposed to the sense that I just had throughout that nobody could overshadow Frank.
So next one is Heists. 1961 was basic as they come. Like it's maybe 10 minutes long, and it's a smash and grab thing, to borrow a term from the remake. Yeah, but me and my brother Josh, when we watched this the first time, we're like, that's it? Like, that's, I don't know.
I think that's why I was so confused about them explaining what was going to happen. I'm like, I thought it was going to be way more complicated.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking there's something I'm missing.
Maybe that's the problem. There were no complications.
Yeah.
Yes. The characters are commenting on how easy this is.
Yeah.
So this is where I didn't do as much research as I needed to, but when I was watching this, I was thinking, is it this uncomplicated because this is like the first heist movie ever? And so I was doing a bit of digging, and I didn't quite appreciate how arguably the first actual movie in history is a heist movie, The Great Train Robbery.
All right, yeah.
And how they've been doing heist movies all this time. And so, and this is where I kind of stopped, was the question of, is this the first heist movie that's an ensemble movie? Because it does feel like that, and it's like the ensemble part got kind of took it over. Because the remake is an ensemble movie too, but it's an ensemble of a different sort. It's not a group of actors like this is not, say, the Brat Pack doing a heist movie. It's instead these actors who apparently are friends and know each other, but they're not exactly a clique in Hollywood. I remember reading. And here I'm showing my age. I actually saw this movie in the theaters when it first came out. When they were doing the promotionals for it, everyone was commenting on the chemistry between Clooney and Roberts, but for the fact that Roberts was married at the time, that maybe there might have been a thing between them. That's how good their chemistry was. But that was, the idea of being that was in a sense their first association.
Yeah,
and so you don't have that, and whereas Angie Dickinson is very much part of that Rat Pack circle. As is Shirley MacLaine when she's brought in for her cameo. So it's so maybe that's the thing, is that it's not like they're figuring out how to do heist movies, because we can point to dozens of examples.
Yeah, I almost paired this with another good heist movie of what is it called? It's a Stanley Kubrick movie, The Killing. Yeah,
yes, with Sterling Hayden. Yeah,
yeah. But I almost did that so that we could compare heists. But I kind of like the idea of just, I don't know, maybe ragging on the old one a little bit, but just comparing how you can take the same story, and it's basically, this is another crisscross thing of it's the same premise, and that's about it. Like, that's. Yeah.
It also shows the value of doing remakes. And this has always been my beef about remakes, which is that we do so many remakes in Hollywood, and it's always of good movies. And it's,
this is the way you do it, in my opinion. This is, you're going to do a remake, take one that has a great premise that didn't use it very well.
I feel like that time has passed now, though. Like, stop making remakes. Try to come up with something original.
Yeah.
I know everything's done under the sun.
And if you find one, by all means, do it. But
but 2024 was a year of remakes and sequels, so it was just like, okay, done.
In a way, Soderbergh had a gift in the fact that he was able to remake a movie that everybody knows, and yet is
up the material.
Yeah, the material definitely was wanting in the original. You could do a lot more with it. The idea of we're going to take this this beloved Disney cartoon and remake it live action, so that's somehow going to improve it, or we're going to sit here and do the the umpty version of this movie here. Yes, yeah, I agree. Especially when the reason why people remember it is because it's a good movie to begin with. You don't need to cut a diamond that is already well cut, because all you're going to do is diminish it.
So the antagonist for the first movie, Acts 1 and 2, file not found,
non-existent.
They allude to it with the confrontation between Cesar Romero. So they do set the stage for it, but you don't know that he's going to be the antagonist.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, but he definitely doesn't play that role in the first two acts.
I guess maybe Frank's girlfriend.
Yeah.
In a way.
Oh, yeah, kind of. But
for his personal life.
With the heist, it doesn't really come into play.
Yeah. She's more of a plot device to let people know about, oh my goodness, Sam's here and Danny and Jimmy.
Yeah, with the third act though, it's she could have been the key to getting them busted.
She could have, if they
never
been
comes into play that way though. It's like all these strands that looks like they could be going somewhere, but they never tie them back in.
Yes.
It's like they don't know how a movie's written. You got to do the setups and the payoffs, but it's like setup. Maybe setup. Maybe this is a setup. But yeah, we're never going to revisit this thing. The remake, we've got an amazing antagonist, Terry Benedict, which it makes it, I think it helps the morality of the movie too, because he's such a non-likable dude that you want to see him go down.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting how, I feel like Cesar Romero had the chops to do what Andy Garcia does.
Yeah. It's in the script writing though. Like you gotta, it comes back to the script. If it's not on the page, it's not going to happen.
They definitely bring a different energy to it. With Cesar Romero, sort of the suave confidence, but nonetheless, the you also get a sense of the greed, there's a sinister element to it that's not just his resume. Whereas Andy Garcia, it's there's the notion of command and power that it's related to what Romero does, but it shows how those things could have worked. But again, as you just said, comes down to the script.
Well, there's one last one that I don't know if we've got anything about, but the leading ladies, Angie Dickinson and Julia Roberts, they basically play the same role. Just one of them goes somewhere and the other doesn't.
Yeah,
really
one goes full
anywhere.
circle, one fizzles out.
Yeah,
it gets to how it I think points to a degree the difference in interest. There's like a perfunctory nature. It's how you oftentimes see this notion that a film has to have a romantic interest, so we can have the ladies have something to be interested in, type of thing. And so in that sense, it is perfunctory. But really, the original is about to the degree that they actually do anything about it. It's about the relationship between these men, this comradeship, which they don't even really develop. They just allude to it. And it's about how Danny's willing to sacrifice for Tony and for Jimmy and their needs, and he feels. You get more emotion for him looking at Tony's body in the Las Vegas street than you do from him in his conversation with Beatrice. Yeah. So he's trying to sell Beatrice on this thing, but it's kind of like honey, baby, I love you type of thing. And there's just no sense that he's really heartbroken about it. He's moping towards the elevator, but he's going to pour down a few scotches and fix that problem easily enough. But
I will say, unpopular opinion, but I will say I do like Angie's performance more.
Yeah.
I wish the writers had more for her. But it was stronger that she knew what she wanted
There's that push-pull to it that you were talking about.
Whereas in Julia Roberts' character, I was like, I don't know what she wants, why she's there, other than not crying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you get this, and she's really two-dimensional to the point where you get the impression, Beatrice, you find out that she's been hurt by him, but she still stands by him, because you get that scene where Danny's girlfriend calls her, and she's sort of trying to imply that Danny loves her more than he loves Beatrice, and she's like, well, you actually made me love him more.
About that scene, yeah.
It's like it's such a disservice, and again, it boils down. It's not that Andy Dickinson's not can't act. It's the fact that she wasn't given anything. Yeah, it was such a thankless role. I mean, Shirley MacLaine is given more to do in her one scene than Angie Dickinson is given throughout the entire movie. The one thing that I think that I enjoyed about both films is the sense of style and the era. Is that we talk about how monochromatic the actors were, but there is such a essential like 50s-ness to it, with the suits and everything, the fashions, the cars, and you really get it. It's one of the things that to me does make the original still worth watching is the sense of, we've already alluded to this, the Vegas of that time.
Yeah,
and you get to,
it's like a time capsule.
Yeah, it is, and in a way, this film, the remake, shows about it's a different Vegas. We've seen over the course of 4 decades how Vegas has changed, and yet it is impossible to imagine these films being set anywhere else. Yeah. They both, I think, very nicely capture the sense of. Although
Ocean's 12 is set somewhere else.
Well, I'm talking about the original. And the remake.
Yeah, okay.
Is that, I mean, you could definitely set heist films anywhere else, but to do like this casino heist, it's impossible to imagine doing anything this stylish in, say, Atlantic City, or Reno. And they had that great the great throwaway line about Basher when he's talking about how the destruction of the casino has disrupted his plans to knock out the power, about how, unless you want to do this job in Reno, and it's just, because you can't imagine this has to be very much a Vegas thing, and both of them are so great in that respect. I mean, Vegas is such a unique place in the United States. There really is no other city like it. Others have tried and failed, but and these films both capture that sense of this place, and also this place where and they both allude to the notion of and you get similar dialogue in that, where Danny, when they're talking about the heist, talks about having the odds and everything, and you get that earlier when Danny and Rusty are talking about how that they're in the house favorless. You get that one hand, and then you put it all down, and then you win, type of thing. Yeah, in that sense, I think both of them capture very well this notion of what Vegas is to Americans, and how we're always trying to get one up on this city, and we celebrate the fact that these two movies have characters to do, one more successfully than the other. Yeah. But we still have that.
Okay, cool. Now into our star ratings. Mark, you want to?
Well, for the original one, it was interesting. I finished watching it and I thought it was a 3-star.
Oh, okay.
But talking about, the more I think about it, it really is a 2-star, and I kind of feel weird for such an iconic movie. Yeah. It's not a great movie. It's not even a good movie, but it's such an iconic movie. But at the end of the day, it really is one of those things where you really have to be half asleep to miss all the flaws in it. Yeah. I mean, it really is an exercise in how far you can get with charisma in your movie, but also the limits of that. And, I'm sorry, maybe because you're not seeing Sinatra as finest, you're not seeing Lawford as finest. I mean, Joey Bishop's a vacuum. I mean, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. are the only ones who really seem to be projecting charisma in the movie. But I feel like, that, because of that, I think it's 2 stars, and even that might be just a tad generous. I'm only giving it 2 stars because I don't do the half stars. So how about you do?
I'll be a little more generous, I guess. I think I'll give them a 3-star for this one, just because I did enjoy seeing the times, the 60s or 50s or whatever. Yes, it was uniform, but it was still cool not much went into costumes, but it's still it was still cool to see their style at the time, so it puts us into that world. The story was lacking a lot, but it still had their beginning, middle, end. It still had their what do we want, Rob? We do it. We failed.
I like that word you used because it's something we didn't talk about, but it's charm, but also tries to get by on cool, and it does get far on it. I mean, everyone's being totally cool and relaxed and everything, and it really does. In that sense, it does, reflect that era very well in that respect too.
Yeah,
cool. Okay, I'll have to give it 2 stars too. It's it's got some charms to it, but I don't know. The Sinatra Rat Pack thing really doesn't do anything for me because that's not. I don't know. I didn't grow up with that as much of a thing, but the story's just not there. Like it's just it's very flat.
It's funny how it's flat. It's funny how they. I mean, what do we associate the Rat Pack with the most, apart from the whole hangout thing? It's music, and there are movies in which some of them are in which do that better, like Robin and the Seven Hoods, and yet they try to make this a quasi musical with both. I mean, it's very natural with the Dean Martin scenes because he's playing a singer. So when we see him singing, it's usually he's performing. But Sammy Davis Jr. had this one scene which is so common in musicals of we're just going to have a musical performance in what is otherwise a regular setting, and then you have him doing a bit of EO11 as he's driving away from the roadblock. But it just doesn't capture that very well. It even fails as a representation of the Rat Pack.
I will say then Army Buddies getting together, pretty normal. So
do they occasionally sing together too?
Not unless you're in a band or choir or something.
Do they occasionally rob casinos?
No.
They probably think they're going to with their gambling skills, maybe.
Ocean's 11, 2001. Mark.
5 stars. And I will grant that it is not necessarily a 5-star film in the sense of like a great work of cinematic art in the way that we think of like the greatest films of all time. But for me, it's such a fantastic film. It's close to being a perfect film, and it's just one it just amazes me how I can watch it time and again and not get tired of it. And to me, that's that's you can't really top a film other than that. So how about you, Hugh?
I feel the same. I think I watched it multiple times. I probably won't watch 1961 again, but I've seen Ocean's Remake 4 or 5 times already. Yeah, and my only gripe with it was Julia Roberts' character. That was, but everything else I enjoyed it.
How many stars?
I would go. I would go to 4 because of just personal choices. I don't care too much about the heist movies.
Yeah.
So it's more of a personal choice than it is like the action movie. So just 4.
So for that reason, I'm gonna have to give it a 5 because I love heist movies. Mission Impossible, the first one, is one of my favorite movies.
And I can't watch those movies. They don't do anything for me.
But I don't know what to say that hasn't been already said. It's a very smooth drink, I suppose. Here I am using alcohol metaphors again.
I can't help to. It's like about Vegas,
yeah. But I don't know. Just the filmmaking is top tier. The actors, of course, are top tier.
And visually, it's a gorgeous movie.
Yeah, yeah. The cinematography is amazing. There's all these oranges and deep blues, and after watching the old Ocean's 11, going into this one, just the pacing, just like it just moves, and it's like, oh yes, the music in this movie too is just amazing. Like I don't know like what styles they're drawing from, if it's jazz or whatever, but the music it's different every scene, and it's very stylistic.
Yeah. And
it's cool in a way that the original, maybe it was cool that way at its time, but I don't know. It's Doesn't have any flab is a big thing that I think separates the two of them. But yeah.
More layers.
Yeah,
a lot of layers.
for sure.
Yes.
Makes it fun.
If you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted clips from Criss Cross and our sister show, Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Transcend Entertainment. That's TRANSCEND. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for watching the Criss Cross Cinema Podcast.
But you wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back.
Criss Cross.
Applesauce.
I'm going to put that at the end.